Hey, I'm Kim.
And I'm Pancho, and you're listening to Now That You See It, a show that will ruin you for boring conversations forever.
It's about the invisible stuff that shapes how we think and connect those, oh, wait, what? Moments that change how you perceive the world around you.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Kim,
Hey, Pancho, how
hi.
are you?
Doing well. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a good week coming off a Labor Day holiday weekend, so I'm feeling like we're still midweek, but the week is quickly moving by. I mean, I guess we are midweek, right? But I feel like I've got more days ahead of me than I do. How about you? How's it going?
We are in the first week of back to school, and I'm
Mhm.
thrilled. I dropped my kids off at school yesterday, and the first thing I did was I came home and took what felt like a 3-hour shower. I think it was probably like 15 minutes. Nobody needed me. It was amazing. It was amazing. I felt like I had a lovely summer. I also, as many parents know out there, it's, it's enough. You're enough. It's done, especially the end of August. You're just sort of crashing into the finish line. And I felt like I washed all of it off and I'm ready for fall energy. I got my fall colors on today. So I'm feeling fan freaking tastic.
So
Yeah.
nobody needed me. Uh,
It's not, I gotta tell you, it is not alone time that I seek. It is not being needed time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's a big difference. There's a big difference.
Steph and I
As a parent.
often we think about do we want kids or not, right? Because we don't have kids. We have a dog. And there are times where we're sitting watching TV and our dog will just come up and sit right in front of us, in front of the couch, and stare at us and pant as we're trying to watch TV. And he's asking to play or he's asking for something, right? And we get annoyed at that. I can't imagine, like with the dog, just be like, dude, go lay down, go away. But with a kid, you can't do that.
We have to be,
So
yes, no, it's very different, like unconditional joy.
yeah, yeah.
But it is also why I don't have pets. Is I have these same thoughts that you probably have about kids of like, oh, I can't do that. I can't no, I can't have another thing that is gonna need a thing.
Mhm.
And yes, you can it's a little bit different, but there's just I'm maxed out on being needed. Love my children as they do, but I'm all set. All set. I've even said no to
That's
gold.
fair.
So hardcore about this. Can't do it. Can't do it.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. No,
yeah.
cool. Well, I'm glad you've weathered summer and are now into, the joys of fall and back to school.
I'm ready. I'm ready for it. Yeah.
Excellent. Cool. Well, yeah, what are we talking about today? I think today I'm interviewing you. So you're
Yeah.
bringing to the table something that once you understood it, you had a name for it, and you go about your life and you can't unsee it. Tell us more about your topic for today.
I gotta tell you, this is one that I saw it, I think like 15 to 20 years ago. I should have looked up the date this book was published, or like not even the book, the concept was published. But I do remember learning about it about 20 years ago and somewhere around there. And once I understood this framework, which is sort of a personality test framework, I saw it everywhere, but not in ways the author intended it to. And as I've gotten older and gone through life, like life being life, kids, marriage, careers, all kinds of stuff, I definitely see it all over the place and definitely in ways that the author didn't intend. And I'm really excited to talk about it today because I have a feeling there are a lot of people who are going to hear this and be like, oh my God, that's why I do that. That's why you do that. That's why my spouse does that. Okay, thank you. And also, if you are a like personality test junkie, if you're like all Myers-Briggs and DISC and Strengths Finders and Enneagram and all these things, like this is just one more to add to your bucket. And it's really simple. There's only four. And it's a 2 by 2 matrix. Like, oh my God, it's the best. It's so intuitive. And also, it's controversial. It's problematic. Like, there are some real problems with this, which we'll, I'm sure, talk about. Uh, but yeah, it is definitely one of those, like, once you see it, you can't unsee it kind of things.
What is it?
All right. It's It's called the Four Tendencies. It's really about your relationship to expectations and authority, and it was developed by Gretchen Rubin, who's famous sort of in the blogosphere for the Happiness Project. She is a former Supreme Court clerk, like verified, the typist A type A on the planet. Brilliant woman who has done tons of work and just sort of like musings and bloggings and books and just there's a whole ecosystem of Gretchen Rubin happiness stuff. And a lot of it's really wonderful. It's sort of like, I'm a little like ugh, cringy about it because I have a irrational, mostly irrational bias against the like eat, pray, love dynamic and like environment people, which is unfortunate because I also recognize that Elizabeth Gilbert is a beautiful human who's done wonderful things. I don't know, man. I was I've got something in me that's like, "Ooh, don't wanna do it." But this framework and a lot of the stuff that Elizabeth Gilbert herself talks about make a lot of sense to me. Um, yeah, I'm excited to bring the 4 tendencies to us, today.
Okay, excellent. Cool. Well, before we jump into that, I'm curious, just quick housekeeping. What, if any life updates are uh are happening for you right now? What's
Like,
exciting on the horizon?
yeah, thank you for asking. I gave the school update, and that is a big one. I'm gonna do a little bit of a 10-second in this life update section, a little bit of a 10-second plug for something I'm working on in my own coaching business because it's also what is exciting for me right now. And that is every December, I look at December 1st and I look at the holidays and what's coming up and I think like, ugh, I don't want to go shopping for people. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't want to be so crazy busy. And what's exciting for me right now is just like in the beginning of the spring last year, I was like, I don't want to experience, and despite my opening, I don't want to experience my summer as just like something I drag myself through. And truly, I didn't. The last like week or so with no camp and no childcare, was something else. I was happy to send them off to school, but truly, like the whole summer was really lovely. Um, it was really sweet. And I am like, wow, I can do this for other parts of my life too. And truly, every December, I'm like, ugh, December. It's so exhausting. And so I'm deciding now, September 3rd, whatever it is, that I'm not going to do that again. And so I am actually for myself, um, I have decided and like developed a framework for how I got through and sort of like brought joy to harder parts of my life. And I'm doing that again for December. And so developing a product that I'm offering to people that's called the next right step. And it's just when you are overwhelmed and stressed, how to cut through the spin. Because sometimes people just need one session to be like, oh, okay, yes, this is where I need to be. This is how I need to be. That's it. Thank you. So it's an intake session and then a big old report. And we can put links in the show notes about how to get there. But that's something I'm excited about doing for people and for myself.
Oh, that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Pancho, I know that you have really just like not done anything in the last 2 weeks and have pretty much sat on a couch, twiddling your thumbs and staring at a wall. And it's been a pretty boring couple of weeks. Am I right? Anything exciting going on for you?
Yeah. I mean, I will say I have been sat on the couch more than historically because I discovered there are shows on Netflix where people have to compete with one another and they bring a lot of like game theory and psychology to the table. So I've been watching a lot of those. There's one called The Devil's Plan. I don't know if
Oh,
you've watched any Korean TV, but they did Physical 100 during COVID, which is all about super athletes doing super athlete stuff together. And, it was kind of like an elimination reality TV show. I just found one that's for basically like super intellectuals. And they do all sorts of like betting games and puzzle games. And it's crack. I stay up way too late a couple of nights watching that stuff. But I also I also got married.
MBD.
And so yeah, I got married and I'm also dropping like releasing I'm dropping a new album. No, I'm releasing a series of workshops. I've started working with organizations on future proofing their teams using people skills. So, everyone's really focused on AI and big data in terms of what they need to learn to keep their teams relevant over the course of the next 5 years. Uh, but research of across the board, Gallup and all sorts of other, the World Economic Forum, are finding that over the next 5 years, the other set of skills that's going to be really important is people skills, being able to communicate with each other and collaborate with each other in a way that's effective. And so that's both at the leadership level and at the teamwork and team effectiveness level. So we're working with organizations, and I'm getting close to announcing what those workshops are. So those are my updates.
That's amazing. You are the least bride, and not a bride at all, but like you got married and then we transitioned to, and then you're dropping these cool things. So you have to tell us one tidbit about your wedding that is interesting. Did anything go wrong? Did anything surprise you?
We were
Tea?
talking
Any
about
tea?
what's that?
You got any tea for us?
Yeah, nothing went wrong. At least not terribly wrong. Yeah.
Oh, great.
At last episode, I think we talked about, how do you go into the week before your wedding in a relatively stress-free state, and we did a lot of planning ahead of time, and I have Steph, my now wife, to thank for a lot of that. I think what surprised me, people across the board kept telling me, "It's gonna go by in a flash. Make sure to be really present. Don't just, let yourself get
Get
carried
through it.
away with what's happening." And I knew that, and I set the intention not to have that happen, and it still fucking happened. Maybe not to the extent that it would've if I hadn't been on guard. I think I have more thinking to do about this and maybe some research, but I think it's inherent to the experience of doing something you've never done before, in which the day is action-packed, and you're often on display in front of other people, to some degree, putting on a performance. And so there are all of these things that happen when you're getting married that don't happen as you go about your day-to-day life,
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's a completely different experience. And it just kind of, like, came and went in a way where I was a little bit more of a passenger in the
Mhm.
experience than I am in my day-to-day life. Um, so that was surprising. We did have a couple of really cool moments, to lean into that, really, like, sit with this and experience the moment kind of mentality and intention. But I also noticed, oh yeah, like, the entire family photo shoot was I was a passenger in that experience. Just stand here,
And
do
there are
this.
photos,
Okay,
so
now
you didn't
stand with this
remember it.
person, do this. And so it's almost like I had no agency in that. I just had to sit there and, like, be the subject of a photo shoot. Um, and so there wasn't a lot of experiential depth in that experience, but I don't know that, yeah, I'm not sure how I would have made it different. Um, so yeah, that's something that surprised me. It's like, no, that's not going to happen to me. I'm going to be fully present and, experience this entirely. And turns out it's just a human thing that happens when you're getting married, because it's a thing I've never done, and it's a completely different kind of environment to the one that I live in on a, regular basis.
100%. I think that's half the reason why people get photographers and videographers, because
Yeah.
yes, they want the memories, but they want memory because you just sort of, yeah, it goes by and you're like, "Wait, that happened? They were there? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow." Well, congratulations. We're thrilled for you.
Yeah.
When I got married, I got up there and I forgot the rings. I was in front of the entire crowd of people and realized I don't have the fucking rings. So I had to
Mm,
turn to my sister. I only had one bridesmaid. Turned to my sister and I was like, "Erica, I forgot the rings." and the photographer caught that moment. So I have this moment
Oh
of
my
me
gosh.
confessing, and then you could see we talked.
Uh,
She was like, "Yeah, forgot the rings," and it just went back, 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 and then somebody ran up to the room to get them, and we got them in
the
time.
telephone.
I'm
Oh,
surprised.
so you didn't realize it when it was time for the rings to come out. You realized it far enough in advance to where you could go through the ceremony and the rings were there by the time you needed them.
Yeah, and Eliza
Okay,
said she was like, "I saw you talking to your sister," and I was like, Why is she talking to her sister in front of everybody at our wedding?" And now we know why. Yeah, the
makes
rings.
sense.
Yeah. Anyway.
Cool. Well, before we jump in and start talking about Four Tendencies, just a quick check in we do every episode.
Mm.
What's on your mind that you can't stop thinking about that now you see everywhere in your life? Quick concept or framework?
Yeah. So, in addition to the four tendencies, which is one of those things, the one that I've been thinking about recently is anger and how people either generally do one of three things. Like they tend towards one of three ways of holding anger, and it's either expression, like a fire hydrant, just like "Phew," the words come out, da da da, just like project at people. Suppression, which is the conscious, like bite your tongue, like bless her heart, a little bit of a passive aggressive thing. And or repression where it's so repressed, it's subconscious. You don't even anger never met her. It's usually one of those three things. And I've noticed in my coaching for burnout and burnout recovery that people tend towards one of those three, and that once I figure out which one of the three it is, it's seeming to set the agenda sort of subconsciously for us, for both of us, of like how we're going to move through the stuff that's holding you back from having a lot of just like thriving energy. The way people relate to anger. So if it's, I wouldn't, for instance, if you're an expression type person, like, you know it because it's it's so out there, and it's like you're having trouble like keeping the feelings in, you just snap. But repression and suppression are tricky, and the repression, which is the conscious, like, "Mm, I will not write that nasty text. I'm just going to hold this in my body." Da, da, da. I look for things like resentment and signs of like people say things like, "Wouldn't it be nice?" Or "It's good for you that you get to do that." Or "Wouldn't it be nice if I could da da da." There's like the passive aggressive signs of resentment is just a great flag that like some boundary has been crossed for you. And then repression, which is the subconscious one, I look for signs like, well, I don't really get angry. I don't, or like, mm, I don't really, I cry. Whatever emotion I have, I cry. Or yeah, I don't really remember a lot of like my childhood. People who just like they couldn't be present with conflict, and so often pushed it down and dissociated. And just how amazing, like if you're one of the three, usually like you tend towards one of the three. And sometimes the conscious suppressors will then become the expressors because it just boom blows out. But really finding, and there's so much more I could say about it, but I've been really thinking about how much this plays out for people that I know and for myself. You're usually one of the three, and then getting out of that triangle model of like one of the three involves just letting the fire of anger, because it's a healthy emotion, morally neutral emotion with information, just like anything else. Once you let it move through you in a healthy way, you can sort of escape this like triangle of expression, suppression, repression. But that takes conscious effort. Like that is a skill we need to be taught. And if you're not, we're going to default to one of these things, and it's usually causes some trouble in people's lives.
Yeah. Hmm. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to say about anger and
Yeah,
its
anger's a
beauty.
whole
I
I mean,
am
I'm sure we'll do an episode on anger at some point in
Oh
the near
man,
future here.
I got a lot to say. But the
Yeah.
three expressions were have been sitting with me. What about
Yeah,
you?
I've been thinking about I feel like this is gonna be somebody who's regularly mentioned on this podcast. I've been thinking about Joe Hudson's golden algorithm,
Uh,
right? And
that's
it comes down to emotions as well, right? The emotions, the things you do to avoid experiencing certain emotions will inevitably lead to you having more of those emotions in a way that creates a negative feedback cycle. And I see it in my life all the time too. I see it in my coaching. I see it in the people that I just interact with. So, for example, my coaching, two examples that are relevant and recent is one, somebody who doesn't want to be a bother. They don't want to
Mm,
feel like they are bothering people because if they are bothering people, those people will ignore them and won't consider their job applications. And so they don't follow up when they don't hear back because they think it's going to be abrasive. But because they don't follow up when they don't hear back, they never hear back. And they're left with this feeling of, well, I I was kind of left behind or forgotten. So their inability to want to deal with the discomfort of
mm,
I might get forgotten or I might be rejected, that leads to them getting forgotten and rejected because they never reach back out again. Or as a leader, if you have an employee that is your direct report and you have a hard time in your relationship with them and you don't want to sit down with them and have that difficult conversation because it's really uncomfortable, the fact that you avoid that conversation is going to lead that employee to feel neglected and disconnected from you. And it's only going to further exacerbate the feelings of discomfort that you have when you interact with this employee inevitably on other calls or in other meetings. And so, it further puts the relationship on ice. So there's all sorts of ways that this plays out. And it usually has to do with I am unwilling to feel this emotion. I am going to do this thing to try to avoid it, which only results in more of that emotion in a greater intensity. And that usually has to do with relationship dynamics.
oh man, this has got to be an episode. The golden algorithm. It's for sure. Once I understood it, I saw it everywhere and it like set my own, I don't know, self-development journey. Once I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, I am this." We all are this, but you see it in everything you do, and it's so cringy when you notice it in yourself. You're like, "God." But what a powerful thing to recognize that, like, the thing you're trying to avoid is what you end up creating. Oh, say so much about that, but that's a great one.
Totally. Yeah.
Thank you, Joe Hudson.
Yeah. Joe Hudson, um, a great man.
Yes. My coach crush.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's get into it. The four tendencies.
Yeah.
What what are they? You gave us a little bit of an overview already, but tell us more about them. What are they in depth?
Well, I wanna start with, like, how this came up, and I'm not gonna share all the details. But it came up because you asked me an ethical question, and I responded with more questions and a framework, which is just
Sure.
what I do. It's not as straightforward. I don't know. I don't think there are a lot of straightforward answers to anything. Um, and that's how we came to talk about this because I realized like, oh wow, I think about this all the time, and it changed the way I think about people in the world. And perfect topic. But the four tendencies are how it really describe your relationship to expectations and authority. Um, and they are essentially like think of a 2 by 2 matrix where um, the top part of it would be sort of like the y-axis, top to bottom, is positive or negative on inner expectations. So if you expect yourself to do something and then you do it, like that's what I need. That's that is something I can uphold. Then you respond well to inner expectations. If you're like, I'm gonna get up at 5 a.m. to work out, if you're like a resolution setter, but not a resolution keeper, you're lower on the inner expectations scale. And then on the X scale, think of that as the outer expectations. What other people, society, I don't know, rules want you to do. People who are both, who are like, they respond really well to both inner and outer expectations are called in this framework upholders. And they are, think of your type A's, like they're the streak people who are like, it once they commit to something, they're just going to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And it doesn't matter if they're setting it or somebody else is setting it, the pace, the expectation, whatever it is, they're doing it. If you are only inner and you're like questionable on the outer expectations, that's a questioner. That's where I've ended up, and I think where you've ended up too, right? You're saying questioner
I did a brief amount of research, and it sounds about right.
feels about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the questioner is somebody who's really, mostly tuned into inner expectations and just takes a slanted eye at outer expectations. Doesn't mean they don't meet them. It's just like you got to. This person has to sort of believe like I get it, I understand why, which can be annoying to the upholders and to the people who are really keyed into outer expectations, because that is often how, in many ways, the world works. So pros and cons to each of these things. If you are like all outer expectations. You need the deadlines, you need the structure, you need the just sort of like the cheerleading support from people. The like, I don't want to let somebody down, which is I should have said this at the beginning. There are no bad tendencies. Like they're all positive. They're all just like morally neutral. Um, that is an obliger. Somebody who like is really, really successful and comfortable in structure that is created usually outside and has some sort of like accountability, deadlines. And so it's really helpful when I'm coaching people to know like, if this is really important, I'm going to make sure that we're going to set up some accountability and coaching in the experience.
Mm,
And then
mm,
finally, if neither work for you, like, you can't make me do it and neither can I, you are a rebel. You are a rebel, my friend. No expectations will work, and there's all kinds of ways to work with each of these tendencies to get the most out of you and the most out of people around you because, again, the real theory is there are no bad tendencies. And also, this one is one where if you like, you probably know you are one. If you're like, "Man, I don't want anyone, including myself, to tell me what to do," you're a rebel. You're a rebel.
mm.
Yeah. So that's the basics.
Okay. This last one, the rebel, I immediately, and you said there are no good or bad, right? But I'm immediately like, God, this person would be a headache to have to work with, right?
Yeah.
If if I can't ask them to do something because their inherent tendency is going to be to say no, and I can't expect them to recognize it's something they need to do and set the intention for themselves because some other part of them is also going to say, "No, I'm not doing that." How do these people function in society? In what way do they find a healthy expectation management, teamwork dynamic, family dynamic with the people in their lives?
Yeah, totally. I mean, truly, there are pros and cons to all of these. Like with the upholder, it's an exhausting life to live by everyone's expectations and your own. I mean, you're just going to burn out into the ground.
Mm,
So, like, everybody has some challenges around this, around all these things. For the rebel, though, man, it would be so fun to get some rebels out here and like bring them on and just interview them. Like, how you doing, bro?
yeah.
But I will say this is a segue into why this framework for me has become, um, I use it in ways that are not as intended, or I see it in ways that are not as intended. And it's given me a different lens on the people around me, but also not as intended. And this intersects with my experience, both parenting and being married to folks who are neurodivergent, and actually being my dad is as well. Um, the rebel profile is very familiar to me at this moment in my life, at this time in my life, because at least like my wife, one of my kids, and my father all have this. You can psychoanalyze me all you want about that, but all have this tendency to be rebels and to have no, just really really need when they're motivated to do something, it's gotta come from, like, the fire inside of them. It's gotta be an idea. It's gotta be an inspiration. It's gotta be, like, something adjacent to what they're doing. It's gotta be tempting. It's gotta be like, "Wow, that sounds exciting. I really wanna do that." And so just talking about it as a parent to sort of commonly known in some neurodivergent circles as the PDA profile, the um, persistent drive for autonomy, sometimes called the pathological demand avoidance profile, is truly like almost anything can be perceived as a demand. And that happens often when your like nervous system is overwhelmed and overloaded by life, just like every last little thing, even if it's like a great idea that you want to be able to do. It's the thing when someone's like, "Hey, would you mind washing the dishes?" And you're like, "I was going to do that. And now I don't want to because you told me to."
Yeah,
That,
and
that. And now I understand that like working with this rebel profile is all about creating inspiration in them and allowing them autonomy to choose of like, you know what? If you wanna go, so for instance, one of my kids, I don't say we're eating at this time and doing this, with food. I'll just sort of leave some options out and let Oren be inspired by this and be like, and actually sometimes it's now that I see that, I know I don't want it. I want a bagel and we can figure it out. And it's the way around. So a lot of it is just like creating inspiration, both in if you're a rebel in yourself, and then also acknowledging like there are pros and cons to each one of these profiles. We all have to work with it. And so sometimes you got to be like, yep, this is a con for me. And I'm just going to say, like, I'm going to do it anyway. Both are true.
yeah. Okay, so if you had to say it in a couple of sentences for the rebel, what are the pros and what are the cons for this profile?
Yeah. I mean, I would love to get the rebels on here, but my sense is that the pros are just like ain't no one gonna fool this person. The BS detector is through the friggin' roof.
Mm,
Even your own BS. Even like, when the easiest person to fool is yourself, less likely with this profile of like they're questioning everything. And that's exhausting, but it also means that in general, like they're gonna get to what is true and real for them pretty quickly. Cons, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. And just having talked to a lot of folks who have similar profiles, and then being so closely connected to many of them, um, what I can tell you is that there are many things rebels want to be able to do and just like struggle to get the motivation for it because it feels like an expectation or a demand. And that's hard.
mm.
You can see it. You're like, I want
Yeah,
that. I just can't.
okay. Hmm. God, yeah, that would be really difficult. I really want that,
Yeah.
but because it's something I'm telling myself to do, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah. And so what we end up doing in these situations where like I know one of my kids really wants to be able to do something, we talk about feeling you want to be the person who has done that thing. You want that feeling. You want that like as your future self, as a gift to your present self. You want to feel good about having done that thing. Nobody wants to do chores. No one. But we all are people who want to have chores done to a certain extent. Like we want to live in a clean house, we want all these things. And so we think about the feeling of having had them done and being the type of person who can do those things and what a gift to the present self that is, to be able to do that. So flipping the script a little bit of like, it's a
Got it.
gift to yourself as opposed to something I have to do.
What about the other 3? I'm
Yeah.
curious if you mentioned each one has kind of, upsides and downsides. W How do you think about each of the other 3 profiles and, upsides and downsides to being one of those?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. And this is why it's evolved for me over time is, um, I want to be able to look at all 4 of these profiles genuinely with, like, there are no bad profiles. As a questioner, though, like, I'm questioning the outer expectations of this framework. It's very hard. And I can see both through the lens of, like, a life coach, I can see how each of these tendencies is a reflection of like, I don't know, the place a person's in, the work they're doing. As distinct from, I think, how it's written about, which is this is just who you are. Like it's fixed. This is who you are as a person. And it doesn't really change much. You have that's why they're called tendencies, is that yeah, you can like spend time in all four of the quadrants, but you tend towards one, just like with the anger thing, you tend towards expression, suppression, or repression, but can be in any of them. So my sense of the pros and cons, just like really stepping back from my own like biases as much as I can, as much as one can, is the upholders get shit done, man. They are class presidents. They are running for president. They are doing all the things for all the people all the time. And that's also the con, is they're doing all the things for all the people all the time, including themselves. So if you are feeling perfectionist, if you get a sense of type A, if you get a sense of just, man, I exhaust myself with my to-do list. Who assigned me all these tasks? Oh my God, I did. And the world. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And just not necessarily questioning where the expectations are coming from. Like it can be an exhausting life, and also it can be a rich, beautiful, high achieving life. So that's an upholder. On the obliger side, that your pros are like, if you're looking for external expectations, you will never be lost. They're always there. You're always out there, right? Like you will always find somebody to be able to tell you what is needed. And I say that a little bit snarkily because it's easy to get lost in other people's expectations when you really struggle to meet your own internal expectations.
Yeah.
But the flip side of this is, and I think the real positive side of this is, these are great team people. These are really great, like givers and just like, man, I want to be able to share me with the world and share my time, my resources, um, my joy with the world. And one could say submit, like a sense of just submission in a really beautiful, positive way to um, to rigor, to structure, to expectations, and not expectations like we usually use them of like the cultural expectations of the world, but these are your like devouts. These are your people who are living in community. These are people who have committed to a big cause outside of themselves and given themselves over to something that feels much bigger to them. And so there's a real spiritual beauty in the obliger. And when you're an obliger living your day-to-day life, sometimes you can feel like, oh my God, I can't get anything done. And then like, yeah, truly, you go back to like the if folks, again, from the neurodivergent adjacent perspective, ADHD profile, you need a lot of external reminders, visual systems, task management, all kinds of things to keep you on track, deadlines, body doubling. You need somebody right next to you. You need to be held accountable. All these things are perfectly normal parts of just being a human, unacceptable accommodations for yourself. And they can live in many different kinds of people. But the really beautiful side of somebody who just like really embraces that obliger side, the external expectations, is that it can turn into, yeah, a really beautiful sublimation of self into a higher purpose. I'll save the best for last. The questioner. Pros and cons of the questioner is pro. I mean, I think it's fantastic, but also I will get to the cons. But the great thing that I love about this profile, for myself at least, is there is a real connection to inner truth. And that's a beautiful thing. Like when that comes above all first, there's an ease of life. And there's a con to it, which is sometimes I'm really hard to work with. Sometimes like I miss deadlines all the time if they don't make a lot of sense to me. Um, but I also get stuff done early if the deadline itself just feels too late. So like when you and I are talking about this ethical quandary, I was sharing like I don't really rules and I don't know. I get law, I get legal things. However, sometimes I don't really pay attention to the rule. I do more than it asks for, and sometimes I do less than it asks for if it doesn't really sit. And I don't really have good reasons for that. And that isn't, it's can sometimes feel a little like, I don't know, self-righteous and selfish. And sometimes it's hard. Yeah, it's hard. If you're an upholder working with me, it can be hard because I do my closest at my full-time job, my closest compatriot I work with every day is for sure an upholder. And God bless this woman. God bless her. She's so patient. And I try hard because I really like her. And she's one of the she brings out the obliger in me. But yeah, it can be hard to work with somebody who's like, "Eh, I'm doing what I want to do. And because your rules don't make sense to me.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, like an easy one that comes to mind for me that I use all the time to explain to people how I think about this, because as per usual, I get met with the reality that people don't experience the world in the same way that I do, or think about things in the same way that I do. Speed limits.
Totally.
No one drives the speed limit. You know, if the speed limit's 65 miles an hour, everyone's driving between 70 and 75. And then you have, you know, the weirdo doing 100 miles an hour, like switching lanes in their BMW. Um, but yeah, no one, and so that's one of the laws. That's a rule. And really the only place I know of in the world where, or at least in the US, where people drive the speed limit is Oregon, and I don't understand why. But everyone in Oregon drives the speed limit.
What up, Oregon?
And when I go to Oregon, I'm like, well, it makes sense to drive the speed limit here because otherwise I am the person who is driving faster than everybody else,
Yeah.
causing a dangerous situation in traffic, right? In California, in Nevada, people drive faster than the speed limit. And so you drive in the same speed that everybody else does because the ultimate goal of the speed limit is to keep everybody safe on the road. And if you are causing traffic to back up or slow down or basically being an unpredictable driver relative to everybody else around you, that causes a more unsafe situation. Um, so, as a questioner, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
For other people, I could see, them having a different narrative about everybody going faster than the speed limit. Um, Something that came to mind for me as you were talking about these is how they are related to our sense of identity.
Yeah.
So it started when you were talking about the upholder and this person being a type A individual who strives, almost feels like it's necessary to meet their expectations of themselves and the world's expectations of them. And the question that came to mind is this the kind of person who, when they don't examine their sense of identity, feels like they are not good enough or feels like they are a failure if they're not getting straight A's, if their parents don't approve of them, if, they didn't make the varsity team, that kind of a thing. And so I'm curious how you've seen that play out, that the dynamic between having a dominant tendency and one sense of identity or belonging or,
Yeah.
value.
Yeah. I think this is where this all got sort of complicated for me is um the four tendencies. I really can't get this out of my head. It's not how it's intended to work, but for me, these four tendencies are each one of them are reflections of, I don't know, various stages of internalized oppression or challenges, like real big trauma challenges, honestly, trauma responses, um, and are not on face value what they appear to be. Mm. So, for instance, like I'm a personality test junkie. Um, And they've never really, like, made a lot of sense to me, so, like, oh my god, the Myers-Briggs test, I get a different answer every time I take this thing. I can't even INTJF off, I don't know. I could never make sense of it. It doesn't really make sense to me, but I'll take it over and over again just to like see. Disc. I don't know if you have you done disc?
Familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an S, and when I got the training, people were like, they were shitting on the S's, and now that was years ago, and now I'm like, no, I really am, because they were not S, they were not sensitive at all, and thought like they were high, like domineering D's, um, and so I really internalize it as like, oh, it's bad because I'm clearly getting the subliminal messages that it's bad, um, but now like watch me S work, bitches. I'm like making a career out of being an S and sensitive. So I'm cool with that. Um, but there's something about the four tendencies that without vilifying or being pejorative about any one of them, I just really see them differently having done so much of my own um, self development and some trauma work and then leading clients through it. So this identity thing, this upholder thing, I see this client all the time in burnout recovery and resilience coaching, all the time. It's the can't let go of other people's expectations, can't let go of my own identity of perfectionism, can't let go. And it's really hard for me to look at that tendency as truly neutral because I see the exhaustion it causes and the like spinning your wheels on um, upholding an identity that is no longer serving. It's that, Brene Brown talks about there's no midlife crises. It's just people coming to a point of recognizing that the armor they needed to survive their lives doesn't have to be trauma. It can just be all kinds of things. That at some point it gets too heavy and you got to put it down. And not everybody's happy with that. And sometimes people people don't always get there at midlife, and sometimes it doesn't happen. And so I think there is a healthy upholder who is just like inspired by internal and external expectations. And then there's a very unhealthy version of it that is imprisoned by the internal and external expectations of the world and of themselves and can't let go of them. And believe you me, you there's no win. There's no winning when you are trying to please not just everybody, but also yourself all the time with no room for error. And so welcome to burnout recovery coaching with me. Like this is who walks into my Zoom room often,
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I'm curious for you, like I'm having a hard time separating my own bias on this one. But what about you? How do you see the upholder? Can you give them some glow up?
And I give the upholder a glow up. I'm not sure. Um, and that's why I asked my question, right? I often think about our the way that we identify, and so I was thinking about the four tendencies using, trying to draw analogies or make connections to a framework that I'm more familiar with, which is, what are the things that you learned validate you
Mm,
as a person? And I mean, this is gonna sound bad, but there is for first generation children of immigrants, especially from certain cultures. Like, for example, the stereotype is the Asian kid who goes to Ivy League schools because their parents want them to either become a doctor or a lawyer. Like,
mhm,
that stereotype exists because for a reason, right? That is a part of the American dream for certain people who come here. They'll go through life just living into this narrative that's being imposed on them, and they internalize the expectation. I think that they create of themselves is, for me to be good, for me to be a success, worthwhile as a person, I am somebody who lives up to these external expectations put on me by my family and my culture. And when I don't, then I fail their expectations of my accomplishments, and I fail my expectations of, am I a good person?
mm, mm. Yeah.
And So that's where I was coming from when I asked the question in terms of, like that narrative that I've seen play out in the lives of some of the people I coach came to mind. But then people inevitably end up in your burnout coaching program or
Yeah.
in some variation of that and realize I can't live my life that way moving forward. And and so maybe there's the opportunity for them to recognize, okay, what parts of the way that I have been over the course of the last 3 decades are helpful, are actually going to help me move forward in a way that feels good and that is healthy and, and living a lifestyle that I want to continue perpetuating. And I think one of those things is what you said. They get shit done. They know how to kick ass and take names. They actually don't know how to operate otherwise, right? Um, and so then maybe it's the nuance of, well, what parts of that whole system aren't true or aren't going to be things that I can carry forward and be a healthy individual. And that is the expectation that if I don't succeed, then my life has not been worthwhile or I am not a good person. Or if I don't meet this other person's expectations that are actually not aligned with what I want for myself, and I've now lived the agony of that for, the entirety of my lifetime, contending with that. And so maybe to put it simply, it's transitioning, making that transition that you called out from being inspired by expectations and then choosing, well, I have this inspiration and like I have an internal wanting to live into this expectation and then recognizing, do I do something about it or do I figure out a way to set that down because it's actually not going to lead to a good outcome?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think um there's healthy and unhealthy versions of each one of these tendencies, and the healthiest version of all of them is, are you making choices based on your values and living the life you want to live, living a life worth leading? And that has to come from just a sense of like knowing yourself and self-awareness. It's less about whether they're internal or external expectations. The external expectation thing, like there's I don't know, there's a lot of like coach talk about your authentic values and your own clarity and your inner da da da. And then there's tons of psychology about like you can do all the external rewards you want and external motivation, but unless it's coming from within you, it's not going to count. To counter that and to really like give the obligers of the world a like, I don't know, thumbs up. There is there is something so beautiful. I mean, this is creativity. This is outside inspiration about being able to see somebody else's accomplishments and work and be like, "Wait, that's possible? I I wanna do that. The standard for this accomplishment is that? Great. I want to meet that external standard." But the whole point is you want to meet it, like, it aligns for you. It's something that's inspiring you. So each one of these tendencies can be lived healthily or unhealthily. The real difference is, are you self-aware enough to know what your values are to make the decisions about what you're gonna do? What expectations are you going to meet? And that identity question that you asked, then the identity question becomes less about who you are, and your identity is about how often am I meeting and upholding my values? Am I a person who consistently meets and upholds my values, or am I not?
Right. Even if my motivation, the thing that drives me to get stuff done is external expectations, in meeting those expectations, am I sticking to the kind of person I want to be and the life I want to live?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
there's real beauty in all of this, truly, like, as snarky as I've been about some of the tendencies, I think there's real beauty in them, and there's the shadow work of each of them when you're not living to the values that you set for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, with the obliger. Now that you explained it, I'm thinking the ends of the spectrum, right? Of living into this and what it looks like to do it in a way that leads to a flourishing life in a way that doesn't. So many people out there, some of the most successful people who are, and success is a tricky word because one person's definition will vary from another's, but some of the most accomplished people out there and some of the people who find the most meaning in their life live a life of certitude. They found something bigger than themselves
Yeah.
to contribute to and live for. And so I could see somebody who's an obliger giving themselves over to that cause
Mhm.
and finding a lot of meaning and fulfillment in their life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with that necessarily, right? We live in a very individualistic culture. So I think our cultural narrative would say, well, what are you doing for yourself? Uh, that's not necessarily the point. I could also see somebody who's an obliger being the kind of person who more readily falls into a codependent romantic relationship pattern or just any sort of, significant relationship pattern where they're only okay if the person on the other side of that relationship is okay. And so I don't know that they're one and the same, but I could see being an obliger that doesn't have a ton of self-reflection or opportunities to understand why do I keep finding myself in this kind of friendship or this kind of romantic relationship, being the kind of person who very easily falls into and then possibly habituates codependency in the most important relationships in their lives.
100%. 100%. And, like, ask me how I know. It's because I've spent time personally in all 4 of these tendencies, and very specifically in that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that there's the upholder thing was, like, my, like, pre-college years, and then I got into the obliger codependency world, where I just lost myself, and then was like, "Bah, I F all this. No expectations." And I've landed in questioner, as, like, I think this is who I am and where I am right now, which is also why I'm like, "There's no way these things are stable and solid." I've moved all over the place, and I think a lot of people have too. And not just, like, hour to hour, day to day, but, like, seasons of life. I've just been as I've grown and evolved, my relationship to authority and expectations has deeply evolved. I don't know. How about you? Have you felt stable and questioner your whole life?
I felt stable as a questioner my whole life. I don't know. I'd have
Mhm.
to sit down and think about it. Um, I think I was a rebel when I was really young.
Mm.
I was a very chaotic little boy, and nobody wanted to babysit Pancho, especially from the years of like 4 to 12, actually 4 to 8. Um, those were the, hyperactive ADHD, um, a decent amount of trauma
Mhm.
in, like a relatively short lifespan and not knowing what to do with myself in, um, yeah, I remember one of the most common baseline feelings of my childhood was frustration at not being understood and not understanding why things were happening around me. And so even then, maybe I was a questioner, but I was a questioner with very little ability to understand the why of things. To understand, I mean, there's no way you can understand how an adult's brain works when you're 4, and if the adults don't accommodate that because they don't have the bandwidth to, then yeah, life is just a very frustrating, confusing thing. So, yeah, I was wondering, part of I'll think about this. I'm not sure that but I'm curious if when we are in burnout, when we are in a place where life feels like it's out of control, when we are in a moment of feeling like we're lonely, these periods of life where we find ourselves in a bad spot.
Mm.
I wonder if we default to things other, to tendencies other than what would be our main tendency.
Oh, interesting.
I could see myself defaulting to in work professionally. This has happened for me at multiple startups where like cash burn is worse than it should be. Um, we're having trouble raising funds for our next fundraising round because our numbers don't look good, and we have way more mission critical projects that cannot fail than we can reasonably carry, but we somehow still need to make this all happen. I go to obliging.
Yeah.
I go to, okay, well, I'm part of this team.
Yeah.
This team can't fail because there are all of these other people that I want to see succeed and have a job at the end of the year. And so I will do whatever is necessary to make sure we succeed in whatever way I can. And I actually, if I'm unaware of it, I click into a mode of collaborating and actually thinking that is subpar to how I operate if I am in an emotionally healthy place. I've gotten my 8 hours of sleep. I exercise regularly. I have good boundaries between myself and an organization.
Oh, it's
So,
so
so when
interesting.
you
Like, where
said
do
you
you
went through
believe?
phases of life and leaned into different tendencies, my question is, well, is it phases of life or is it different levels of, like emotional health, relational health, stability, that kind of thing?
For sure. I mean, I think I've experienced sort of the shadow sides of some of the tendencies and more of the healthy side of the questioner, but and can also see the shadow side of that. But you're right. Like, the speaking of things that you see, once you see, you can't unsee it. For me, the Enneagram is the sort of personality characteristic. I know we talked about this last time, but the personality characteristic framework that I resonate with the most. And there's one of the cool things about it is that it tells you not just like who your sort of core personality, but what happens in stress and what happens in strength. Like, when you're doing well, what do you look like? And when you're doing poorly, what do you look like? And so I'm a 9, I'm a peacemaker. And when I get stressed, I go to 6, which is sort of like the security model. And I think of it as the ultimate chief of staff who's like scanning, or ringmaster of the circus. We're like coordinating things, but like a little paranoid. And that, to use this analogy, I go to obliger too when I'm stressed. I go to the like security for me is everybody else is happy. And so I got old stuff. It's just super old codependency stuff. And I lose myself. And this is a model of the peacemaker 9, is you fall asleep to your own needs. One of the cons of it. And that would happen for me in the like unhealthy obliger model. And in my strength, I can go to upholder. I can go to like, yes, I have enough capacity to take on other expectations. I can see like, I don't really agree with this, but like I get the importance to you and I really like you. Or I get the importance to like this overall thing, and like I'm gonna do something I don't like and it's gonna be okay. But I can see myself diverging in strength and weakness, strength and stress, to those two things. I don't quite go to rebel though.
So
Too
that
often.
leads me, you mentioned earlier the difference between almost, like making the choice to comply or lean into or act in accordance with an expectation, or just feeling like, God, the expectation's there, I have to do it, or the expectation's there, therefore I'm not going to do it. I'm hearing you say that as a questioner, even when something doesn't make sense to you, you realize how important it is to somebody else. And if you have the bandwidth for it, you find yourself upholding that external expectation just for the sake of doing something for somebody you care about, not because you think it's actually worth your while or meaningful or maybe necessary, even, like good.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, um, it is what I notice happens for me is I will look for, if I can see the importance of somebody, I will look for other ways of finding importance in myself for this. And it's that classic question of like, do you want to be right or do you want to be in a relationship? Do you want to be
Yeah.
correct or do you want to be held? And man, I like I I don't need to be right. a lot of the time. Like, I can drop that pretty quickly because my value is connection. For sure, my value is connection, and so when my questioner tendency comes into conflict with with connection, I choose connection. And, that is why I get to obliger pretty quickly in stress. So I have to be careful about it, but connection is one of my highest values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Feels like a good place
what
to wrap up.
else
Yeah.
as we wrap up, I'm wondering, what final thoughts or tidbits you might wanna share that you haven't shared so far.
I think like anything, spoken like a true questioner, this framework is a chew the meat, spit out the bone kind of experience of take what you want from it, take what resonates for you from it. And this is not law. This is not like a Newtonian physics. This is just observations and anecdote, which, the author will share. There's I have found it so helpful when noticing my differences with other people and just like what comes up for me in terms of resistance. When resistance is coming up, where is it coming from? Oh, right. Okay. Because I don't understand this. Why? I mean, it can really be annoying in yourself as a questioner to be like, I know I'm supposed to do this work for my boss, and I just cannot make myself do it. Why? And I'm like, all right, because I don't understand it. Maybe I could try to understand it a little bit better. Maybe I understand why it's important to her. Maybe I can get to know her a little bit better. Um, and that's actually been one of my tricks around this for me is leaning into the relationship side of things when I'm not doing things I know I like probably should do. Is can I get to know this person better and know what's important to them? Um, so I would offer that this is, chew the meat, spit out the bone kind of thing, play around with it. And this I would actually love to hear from people about their experiences with each of these tendencies and like what did we as a questioner, what did we get wrong? What was missing? What are people experiencing that we didn't give light to? Me specifically. So how about you? You want to share anything before we go? What's Steph? Do you know? Your wife.
What is Steph? I would say Steph is probably an upholder.
Mm-hmm. If she
Again, why
you
we
manage
did not
that
have a
one.
stressful wedding.
Yeah. See? The benefits of holders. You
Exactly.
don't do stressful
Totally.
weddings.
Yeah, yeah. So
Although I wonder
yeah,
if
I
they were
think
stressful for her and just not for you.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. She had wedding stress dreams before the wedding. I'm having wedding stress dreams after the wedding. I'm
Yeah.
having dreams now that, like I'm late to the wedding, but the wedding's done. So yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, she stressed out a lot more in the year leading up to the wedding compared with me. Um, I guess I'll echo what you said about, or I'll agree with what you said about these frameworks. They're so valuable, and even ones that I kind of turn my nose up at, like astrology.
Mhm.
It's it's impossible for me to know if if the entirety of everything outside of our atmosphere influences who we are as people. It could. To treat it as a certainty feels like it locks you into believing something that you can't back up. That said, if you read your horoscope for the day and it leads you to reflect in some meaningful way about what's going on in your life and it leads you to some greater level of insight about why you are the way you are and the person you want to be and how you want to tackle the day,
Mhm.
fucking great. That's a super useful tool, regardless of whether it's, based on truth or based on some weird myth that has been handed down for however long it's been handed down. So yeah, I think with this, I'm holding it conceptually as a new way of thinking about why people deliver and accomplish when they do, and why it may be that sometimes people just don't get shit done when for me it makes total sense that they should be.
Yeah.
Um, and and yeah, I'd encourage I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this podcast is, you know,
Take what you
try
want
to
from
look
it.
at the world in a different way.
Yeah.
And so if this is a tool that helps people do that, then great. And if it's not useful, then fucking can it and move on, I guess. Not to discredit or dispute everything you just shared, but that's kind of my stance on these personality tests is if it helps you, great. Keep working with it. The moment it doesn't seem like it's valuable or it's not helping you anymore, then there's other stuff out there you can try.
Yeah. I love that. All right, friend. Call it a night.
Yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the
Yeah.
conversation. As
Yeah, thank
always,
you.
keep questioning. Okay. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.